I would argue that free will and determinism are not at odds. I would also argue that free will is more of a psychological or sociological idea than it is an idea in physics. And that's why I say that determinism and free will aren't at odds, because they're really different domains of reasoning. Free will speaks to the human need for self-determination. Others do not control my actions. So slavery or bullying or manipulation of any kind is explicitly goes against the notion of a person having free will, in that they have to strive to resist or they have no choice and are unable to resist, and therefore they do not have free will. Whereas the deterministic view of the universe states that what comes in the future is derived from the state of the past. And knowing the state of the past, one can, through a constituent systems view of the universe, derive and determine what the next state will be. Just because you know the state of the past and you have a sufficient model to calculate the future state, you now have the ability to predict. And in this prediction, we say that we have knowledge of the future. The reason that we tend to think of behavior within the universe as statistical is because that's the best we can do in our modeling, in that we measure the series of results in which we are unable to predict the outcomes by some intuitive sense, but we can categorize those results within the terms of probabilities, a distribution of possible outcomes, given certain frequencies, therefore certain percentages. And this notion of statistical outcomes becomes our model. It's not that the constituent system that produced those outcomes was not deterministic. It's just that on a statistical basis, it ends up having a certain distribution pattern. We tend to use the same kind of intuition based on previous experience to measure the outcomes in which we expect in social situations, where we're dealing with other people either as individuals or within groups. The sense of taking past results, either scientifically measured or intuitively measured, and then projecting them into the future, we take these two parallel lines of reasoning and act as though they're one and the same, when they're not even close to being one and the same. So how does one deal with the fact that the universe is deterministic? You have to take away that connection between your intuitive sense of the future and a mathematical model of the future, which at a physical level represents some range of possible outcome. Those two things have to be cleaved off of each other. So now what does free will mean? Free will is really an expression of who you are and the experience that you have and the logic that you use and the emotional state that you're in the social setting, the overall context of your position within the universe and within society, and how you use all of that information and that context and that emotion to make a decision. And within that, you are totally free, but it's deterministic. So it's not really a free will option that you're worried about, and that there is a coercion or a manipulation there. Let's put it this way. There's no way to predict the future outcome in a social setting with absolute certainty, because you always have that element of a hugely complex constituent system in which your decision is made. And the outcome isn't assured because the other parties that are participating, be they human beings or be they, aggregate systems within a crowd, a speaker on a stage, let's say, or a performer, or a sporting event, where you don't know how people are going to react because of the general environment in which they are psychologically. In either case, the intuitive or the physical, our models are insufficient to completely predict any given outcome, and we have to treat them in a statistical way, intuitively statistical, or mathematically treat them rigorously as a statistical outcome. I think people find it disturbing to think that there are simply a set of rules which drive through to determine a new outcome. I think when intelligent people look at determinism and they apply it to their own behavior, and then they get emotionally troubled by the fact that it looks like their choices are forced. It's really a connection back to that intuitive sense of wanting to be free, of not wanting to be coerced by other people or societal forces or manipulated in any psychological way. I like to think of it the other way around, in that there is a certain elegance to the fact that my thoughts and the structure of who I am mentally can be manifest within the universe through a process that is rational and with a outcome that isn't completely predictable. You have a choice on which aspects of your experience, your moral sense, on how you choose to behave. And those are choices. You do an evaluation. That is the essence of evaluation. And all choices are made from an emotional basis. They've scientifically demonstrated that people that have an inability to experience emotion are unable to make choices. So, in that it is emotional and that it is rule based, it is an expression of who you are. So, that's the amazing eventuality that comes out of each of us, and the actualization of our own potential and our own will, and our own ability for our will to evaluate our circumstance and make a choice on how we want to change the world around us. It's a highly spiritual thing when you come down to it. Nonetheless, it's deterministic, and that's fine. It's fine. I can't know the outcome until it actually happens. I'm fine with that. Constituent system, highly complex, rule-based, but it's still a choice. It's still my choice. No one forced it on me. I am free to make that choice, and I'm free to choose the rules by which I made that choice. So I really think that the idea of free will versus determinism, the two aren't at odds. In fact, the two are really one and the same. It's free will, it's the surprise of your own decision making.